Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Soaring Through Adversity podcast, brought to you by the Victory Advantage, a private nonprofit foundation dedicated to empowering individuals with cognitive and physical disabilities to live independently with dignity and respect. I'm Renee Breazeale, co founder and CEO of TVA, and your host. Through candid conversations and inspiring interviews, we'll uncover the abilities of every disability. Our goal is to challenge perspectives, foster inclusion, and celebrate resilience. Join us as we redefine what's possible, one story at a time. Now, let me introduce my dynamic guests. Born in Palo Alto, California, Karla Dougan later moved to Athens, Georgia, where she still resides with her parents and younger brother. From a young age, she led an active lifestyle, immersing herself in sports like soccer, swimming, and running. Whether on the field, in the pool, or pounding the pavement, she's not only thrived in movement and competition, but also served as the director of her school's online news magazine, The Odyssey. Her early years instilled a sense of determination and perseverance that would serve her well in the face of future challenges. My second guest was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1964 and raised in Minneapolis. Scott Dougan developed a passion for learning at an early age. He earned his Bachelor of Arts from Brown University in 1986 and then pursued a PhD in developmental biology from Rockefeller University, which he completed in 1995. His academic journey led him to the University of Georgia in Athens, where he joined the faculty as the Department of Cellular Biology in 2001. Beyond his career in science, Scott's greatest pride is his family. He married Christina in 1997, and together they have two children, Karla and Tomas. With a lifelong dedication to research, education, and family, Scott continues to inspire those around him through his work and personal journey. Today, we will examine how unexpected challenges can profoundly reshape our lives. Through resilience, hope, and unwavering support of our family, even the toughest journeys can lead to strength and inspiration. Our episode today is One Choice, One Moment. Welcome, Karla and Scott. Thank you for agreeing to be my guest today. I'm looking forward to our
Me
conversation.
too. Thank
Hello.
you. Hi.
Okay, Scott, let's start with you. Take us back to the day when you first got the call. What were those first days and weeks like for you and your family?
Well, it's you can't really explain it. It was New Year's Day, and it was New Year's Eve's day, so I was looking for food to cook for New Year's Day the next day. And Christina called me. She had been out doing something else, and she called me in tears because when she got home, there were policemen in the driveway, and they told her that Karla had been in a car accident and we had to go to the hospital. So she called me, and I was already out and heading in that direction because I was going to pick up our son. So I told her to pick up our son, and I went to the hospital, Athens Regional. When I got there, I went to the emergency room and I told them my name, and they rushed me back to the room, and I didn't have any idea what to expect. I asked the nurse if Karla had died, and she said no. And when I got there, you could tell it was serious. But when I got back there, she was lying in a gurney. They hadn't really taken any care of her yet, and they haven't really treated her yet because they didn't know how old she was, and this was the cause for her the sort of panic from the hospital. They are not a trauma one center, and they are not authorized to treat minors for in trauma. So they couldn't treat her until they knew how old she was. I guess they didn't see her driver's license or something. So I told them how old she was, and since she was 17, she had to go to a different hospital. Policemen met me there. They sort of told me what had happened, and you don't really listen. I remember trying to repeat what they told me to try and understand what they were saying. What I heard was that she was in a single car accident, so there was no other car involved. She was trapped under the car for some period of time, and when the EMTs finally got to her, they had to lift the car up from her, and this happened in Madison County. And when the EMTs actually got the car off of her, her heart wasn't beating anymore, so she had an anoxic brain injury.
So she literally died.
Well, her heart had stopped,
Yeah,
and they restarted it again.
yeah,
And we had no idea how long her heart had stopped. And of course, you can't really go for very long without a heartbeat before you start losing oxygen to your brain.
yes.
So she had been, what I heard, picked up from other sources in the weeks that followed, while she was under the car, she had been talking to people. She was conscious when she was under the car. Other people had seen the accident, so it wasn't like she had been left there for a long period of time waiting for someone. Like, they called the ambulance right away, and someone got out of the car and spoke with her while waiting for the EMTs, and she was talking to them, telling them, am I going to die? I don't want to die. And then they got the car off of her, and at some point her heart stopped. I think what happened is she had a crushing injury. So the car had rolled on top of her somehow. She got expelled from the car during the accident, and the car rolled on top of her, broke her one leg. She was in a depression, so it didn't crush her, but it didn't leave her a lot of room to breathe. So she had been in a sort of hypoxic environment for a while, but she could talk. And then when the car lifted off of her, the stress chemicals that had been building up got released and sort of overwhelmed her heart, and that's why it stopped. And that's what happens during crushing injuries, I have since learned.
So that leads me to a question of, because the first hospital wasn't able to accept her at her age, did that have any long lasting effect on the length of time that it was between the time she got to the first hospital and the second?
Well, so yeah, it did. I mean, she was flown to Grady Memorial, so they had to find a place for her, and the choices were hospital in Augusta or hospital in Atlanta. Finally, they flew her to Atlanta, which, by the way, wasn't covered by insurance, so that was fun. That was a $50,000 bill to fly her from Athens to,
Mhm.
to Georgia, because they considered it an elective operation, right? So the other option was to go by an ambulance, which is an hour and a half trip.
Which wasn't an option.
Not really, not when your
Yeah.
daughter is just recovered from having her heart stopped, right? And
Yes.
yeah, so of course we had no idea. We just said, yeah, take her, fly her there. So they airlifted her, and then we got this $50,000 medical bill. The other thing is, so my son and my wife arrived at some point while I was talking to the police. Tomas was holding Carla's hand while she was lying in the gurney, and they were figuring out what to do. At that point, Karla started shaking. So one thing that I think she'll tell you is that she has a movement disorder, which is called it's Lance Adams syndrome, but it's intentional myoclonus. What happened was, early on during this period, her body started shaking. It was like constant tremors. Um,
Not like a convulsion or anything like that, like a seizure. It was
didn't
something
it didn't
different.
it didn't look violent like a seizure, but it was like a constant wave, her whole body going through her whole body, and she was just shaking, like, I don't know, like a leaf. It was kind of like when you're cold, but more than that.
Mhm.
I didn't know that at the time, but that's something that happens with anoxic brain injuries, and it's also kind of, they say in the literature that it's a bad prognostic indicator, which I think just tells you that they don't really know what a good prognostic indicator is and what a bad prognostic indicator is. But that's kind of, I'm sure, what they were thinking at the time. So I was talking with the police with Christina, and we were trying to get the information, trying to retain it, which, under those circumstances is impossible to do. Eventually, the hospital decided to send her to Atlanta, to Grady Memorial, to the ICU. We dropped Tomas off at a friend's house, and then Christine and I drove to the ER at Grady. and we got there, and Karla was still in the ER, and I remember very clearly. So they were working on her. There's a whole team of people working on her. There was a female physician, and Karla at some point opened her eyes, which was a good sign.
Yeah.
And as soon as she opened her eyes, the doctors were calling her name and trying to get her to respond. They were trying to assess her neurological state.
From how long her brain had been deprived of oxygen.
Right, and we had no idea how long her brain had been deprived, so we didn't know really what to expect, and so at some point, she opened her eyes and the doctor called her name. She didn't answer, of course, but she did. The doctor did tell us that she thought her eyes were able to track her fingers when she moved, which is
Mhm.
kind of a good sign. Um, but it's all kind of guesswork. And then she got admitted to the hospital into the intensive care unit, and there she was taken care of by the trauma team, and neurologists for about 3 weeks. She was there. So she was there from, January 1st, 2017 to about January 20th, 2017.
Okay. I had talked to your wife about being on here, and she was worried about being a little too emotional, and I cannot imagine how she felt with me as a mama with those police officers standing there telling her this thing. I cannot imagine. And then the length of time that it took you guys to drive from one hospital to another must have seemed like an eternity.
Yeah, so it was seemed like a long, long drive.
I'm sure it
And
did.
yeah, it was yeah, that was a tough drive. And it was for Christina. I mean, I don't want to talk about how she was feeling, but I will say that her father had just died, in November of 2016, and he had a stroke and he died at home. He was in his 90s, so he was quite an elderly man. But she had spent like 3 weeks with him, with feeding tubes and lying in a bed. And when she saw Karla in the ICU, her first thought was like, "This is just like my dad,
Yeah, it was
um,
a
except
trigger.
except my daughter." Right,
Yeah, it was a trigger for her to really a trauma. Oh my gosh, that she was reliving with. Oh, that was a terrible place to be at that moment.
right. Because of that incident with her father, I had talked with both of my kids actually about what I would want, because they were debating whether or not to feed their father, and I had been debating. I told my kids that if I was in that situation, I would not want to be fed, and
Yeah.
I would not want these extra things. And Carla said, "Yeah, me too." So that was all actually very fresh in our minds, um,
Oh,
during this time.
yes. But from what I'm hearing, you saw very, very quickly that this was going to be a long road for Carla.
No, I would say I had no
No?
idea. I had
Okay.
no clue, right? I
Mhm.
I I had no clue then. I We didn't know whether she would live or die, and we didn't know, um, whether if she did live, whether she would ever be conscious again. There's just a lot that can go on there. I mean, there were times. So during that period of time, and Carla was basically, under for the whole time. She was, just to give you an idea of what she was like. She was evaluated by somebody for the Shepherd Center. Actually, came by and, compared her to Terry Schiavo. I don't know if you remember, Terry Schiavo, that story.
I do not.
Um, so she was a woman. This is a big deal in the 90s, and she was a woman in her 30s who had a basically her heart burst. I don't know exactly what happened with her heart, but she had an aneurysm or something, and she stopped, and they were able to revive her, but she was in a persistent vegetative state for like 20 or 30 years. And during the 90s, her husband was trying to discontinue support for her, and her parents were arguing that she was alive anyway. So, and president got involved, and the governor got involved. I mean, it was a big national story, at the time. But I'll just bring that up here to say that, you don't want anyone comparing your daughter to Terry Schiavo. That's
No.
not a comparison
Yeah,
that
no,
you
you
want
do
to.
not.
Yeah.
And as you continue with that story, I do remember that. And I cannot imagine how the husband was feeling. during that process. That was tough for that family. Karla, let me switch to you. Describe for us the moments leading up to the crash.
Well, the moments leading up to the crash were just like, um, for me, they were like, I would say, pretty normal moments, in a car.
What were you doing that day?
I was listening to music and I was texting. Leading up to the car crash, I was like on my phone. I think I was texting my boyfriend at the time or my friends. I really don't know what I was doing. It doesn't really matter. Um,
No.
but I know I looked up after or whatever it was that I was doing on my phone. I looked up, I saw that my car had drifted like quite a ways off of the road, and so I overcorrected and flipped my car over 3 times. And I landed,
Three times.
yes, I landed. It flipped 3 times, and it landed on my right leg, and the rest of my body was underneath it.
Oh, Karla, you had to have been scared. Now, do you remember laying under the car? Do you have any recollection of any of that?
My brain has protected me from all of those traumatic memories, so no, I can't remember any of that. But
That was actually one of my questions, that do you wish you had remembered, or is it a blessing that you do not?
I sometimes like wish I kind of like knew what was going on there, like at that moment. But I think if I had known, if I was more aware of what was going on in that moment, I would not be okay right now.
The fear would have taken so much of your energy. Yeah, I get that. I get that. And it was New Year's Eve.
Mhm.
So you had plans. You were going out like any normal
I
teenager.
was actually, I mean, I was on my way home to meet my friends to get ready for our New Year's Eve party. That's why I
Okay.
was on my way home to meet them there. And I was, I guess, a little bit in a rush since I was a little bit, I was running a little late. And I think they were already on their way to my house. So I was just kind of rushing there
Was in a hurry.
a little
Yeah.
bit.
That one moment changed everything. Once you were fully aware of what had happened, what was the most difficult part of adjusting to your new reality, Karla?
That's a crazy question, because I didn't really fully understand what actually happened to me until like a few years after the fact. I think when I was at the hospital, like I ended up being at the hospital, my parents and my therapists had to remind me every single day that I had or that I was in a car accident, right?
Yeah, every day.
Yes. Dad, is that true?
Yeah, so she was so in the intensive care unit at the in Grady, the neurologists were telling us one thing, and the trauma surgeons were telling us something else. So the trauma people were very pessimistic about Karla's prognosis, whereas the neurologists were telling us that they'd seen people with her level of injury stay just where she was, which was basically in a coma, or recover to be almost, to be normal, to back to
Yes.
their previous life. And I took that as a positive thing because at the same time when we were at the hospital, another woman who's had a son a little bit about Karla's age had gotten hit by a car, and they told her that he was brain dead. So I knew that they would tell us that news too if they felt that.
Yes.
So even though it was tragic for that person, it was also, I was thinking about Karla and thinking, well, at least they haven't said that to us. Eventually, they came around and took her to the Shepherd Center, and she spent from January to basically January to May as an inpatient at the Shepherd Center, and then was an outpatient there until August of 2017. And during that time in the Shepherd Center, we had to remind her every single day what happened to her, where she was, why she was there. We had a poster board in front of her bed so she could see it. She wasn't able to talk for several weeks after this, and they diagnosed her as being in what's called a minimally conscious state. So she was in a she wasn't in a coma and she wasn't in a vegetative state, but she was a minimally conscious state, which is of the disorders of consciousness. That's kind of the best place to be. um and but she couldn't remember from one day to the next.
From that point, how long did that exist? How long did she deal with that? When did your memory start coming back?
I don't really know. Probably around like 20, like um maybe 2020, around
Yeah.
there.
I mean, I would say it was a very gradual process. People think of coming out of something like this like it's like a switch, like an on-off switch.
Mm-hmm.
But for Karla, it was really, really gradual, and there was gradual improvement. I can think of two specific incidents in the Shepherd Center where she learned something and it stuck. The Shepherd Center is just a fantastic place. I can't say enough great things about it. And when she had improved enough in her rehabilitation there, they started bringing her to um, group therapy. And this is not, so I would attend to all her therapies, and I still do, but I couldn't go to any group therapy. So they took her away to go to group therapy once. And
I know this
and this was
story. I know this
this
story.
was yeah. So this was soon after she became verbal. So it took her, she was, I think her first words after the accident were in March or something, early March. Um, and so
I bet those were beautiful words, no matter what they were.
No.
there was no.
No.
um, and then she started arguing about wanting to have a shower. So she still had her personality, but so so anyway, so she had this therapy session, and they took her away, and and she came back early. That they brought her back early, and and she was in tears, and I was like, what happened? And they said, well, this is what happened. We went around and everyone talked about their life or something, and Karla wanted to contribute, but she couldn't really talk, and she was very frustrated because she couldn't speak. um and that's why she started crying.
I thought it was
And
different.
then there are two, remember, there are two
Okay, all
incidents.
right.
So that was so she was crying because she couldn't really talk.
Yes.
um and
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 I love
and
talking. I love talking.
she does love talking, and she's quite vocal, and she
I can tell
but
that by your social media, by the way,
Thank you.
and the articles that have been written about you. You're definitely a friendly girl.
Thank you.
but she could talk only like barely above a whisper at this point, and couldn't even hold her head up really. During that week, she was talking. She really, her verbal speech sort of went up like crazy. And then I don't know if it was a week later or the next week, but the next time they took her into a group session, um, she was talking really well, and she had no problem verbalizing herself. So that
Mhm.
was one thing. But then they took her away for the second session, and again she came back early in tears. And so then, well, what happened this time? And the therapist was saying, well, everyone was talking about how they're different brain, and there's people with different types of brain injuries and stuff, and they're all talking about how their brain injury has impacted their lives and what it's like living with a brain injury. And then they got to Karla, and they said, well, Karla, what is it like living with a brain injury? And Karla said, I don't have a brain injury. And so they had to say, well, yes, you do have a brain injury. And remember, we've been telling her every morning that she had this brain injury,
Yeah.
and never really remembered it. But so they had to tell her that she had a brain injury in this group session, and then she broke down crying, but she didn't forget it.
Yeah.
Um, so those are two points of realization, but the whole process of her memory really continued, and it even continues today. But she had real memory deficits even when she came home in 2017, and she finished school on time and got into UGA. but she was working with a speech therapist here in Athens, and one of the things they worked on consistently was memory and remembering things, and so now on her cognitive tests, I think her memory is within the normal range, whereas before, it was really bad.
That's amazing because from what I understand, Carly, you graduated on time, but most of it was because of the grades that you had acquired before your accident. Is that you were that smart?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you still are, but you know what I
Yeah, I
mean.
do.
You just work a little bit. You're just as smart. You just have to work a little bit harder. Is that right?
Yes. It is.
Yes. To move ahead a little bit, how have you managed through all this to like daily? Tell me what your day is like.
Well, my days have changed a lot. It took like the first few years that I was back in Athens. Every day I was reminded about my injury because my body didn't work how it used to.
Yeah.
And so for the first few years, I was just grieving, um, and I still grieve. But the first few years of me like back home, and trying to like re-enter my life, I was grieving like my past self, my past body. And and that's hard. Like that is a really hard thing to do. And I've had to learn to accept my body as it is now, and that's still hard.
And I like where you started, like where it was then and how it is now. I think from the grieving standpoint, everyone can understand that. I had some things happen to me, and you do grieve who you once were.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to mention where Scott talked about how fantastic the Shepherd Center is, that's where you met my stepdaughter, Madison,
Uh,
who I had
the
done a
outpatient, yeah,
podcast.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, she had done a podcast with me previously. And, I've watched her progress, and it's kind of like your dad said, it's ongoing.
Hmm.
One of the things that some doctors told me that you're going to get everything you're going to get back in a year. But I had a great neurologist that said, you keep working, it'll keep coming back. So I tend to think that, these doctors that have this optimistic attitude, not just the attitude, but the wherewithal to be able to help you get to that point is absolutely amazing. And that's what I saw at the Shepherd Center because I spent 2 weeks down there with her.
Hmm.
And man, was I wore out. They keep you guys busy.
Yeah. But so my daily life, like at least when I first got home, I couldn't really take care of myself like at all. My parents had to hire someone to help them take care of me.
Hmm.
It's like I could not dress myself. I couldn't brush my own teeth. I couldn't take myself to the bathroom. I couldn't do anything. I don't really know when that really changed. It was probably very gradual.
Yes.
Um, and I started college that fall, and my parents. Oh, I also rushed. I rushed at UGA.
All right.
Yeah, I was a tried out there for 4 years. Um,
You a go getter.
so yeah, I mean, yes, I am. Some days, like in fall 2018, I could feed myself. Other days, I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't like grab the utensils. I think at that point, I may have been using like the larger spoons and stuff
Mm-hmm.
to feed myself still.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't use those, I needed help eating.
Yes.
And I need help in the bathrooms. I need help with pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got and then at that point, I rushed as well. So my actually my tutor at the time for one of my classes kind of prompted me to want to do this, and all of my friends that were also rushing and stuff, that kind of made me want to as well. Well,
Yes,
um, so my parents were they're very supportive parents. Um,
I can tell.
yeah. So my mom emailed or reached out to the Panhellenic office here and told them that I would be rushing, and took me to all the like rush panhandle stuff.
Hmm.
And then and all of the sorority houses, or almost all of them, made their houses accessible to me. There was one house that didn't. I'm not gonna name it, but I'm still bitter about it. Because I was just mean. But
Yes, it was.
um, but I but I rushed and pledged tried out, and made I had some friends from high school there, which made it like a more familiar place for me because I had a friend, Amelia, and another Karina, that were a year above me in high school, that were in that sorority, and kind of like helped me feel welcome and accepted there. And then I met my big EG. I love her. We're still friends. I rushed and became a member, although I couldn't really like participate in all the things that sorority life does or did. I
But you did what you could.
I did, yes, I did what I could, but it was always kind of a feeling of like being a little like being an outsider,
I can understand.
um,
Yes.
which is the nature of my disability. And as I've recovered, like my junior and senior years were a lot better because I was a lot more capable of talking and socializing and doing things. But the first year or two until COVID, I was not really very good at socializing or capable of that. But I still attended sorority events and stuff. So like I, I did become like more social. Yeah, I think the sorority helped me or allowed me to be more social than I otherwise would have been.
One of the things that I talk about is teaching people how to treat people with disabilities. And I don't think that's, something that makes them mean. It's just that they don't know.
Yeah,
And probably the fact that as you became more social, they became more accepting. Not saying that that's right or wrong, but that's just that's what I experienced. When I was in a wheelchair, people wouldn't talk to me. They would talk to my husband. Whether I could talk or not, they didn't even try. Wouldn't make eye contact. That kind of thing.
mhm.
And then talking about them making those houses accessible, that's fantastic. But they probably already should have been, you
Yeah, they
know?
should have
Yes, and open to everyone. So, and then like, again, we won't talk about the one that didn't. That's just not right.
been. No,
One thing that has been, I think, driving Carla is that she has always wanted to have a normal college experience, which wasn't really possible for a long time because she had to live at home. There was just no way with her. So I don't think we've explained her movement disorder really, but basically, what happens is when she tries to activate one muscle, like she tries to pick up a pen or something, other muscles also get activated at this point. Like she might kick a wall or something like that. It's just when she stands, and she can stand and walk now, but she has balance issues, and you can feel her abdominal muscles just twitch constantly when she's standing. And years ago, when she started college, that was much worse. I mean, she was on a massive dose of Valium every day to keep everything under control, which didn't help her cognition either.
Yeah, that'll definitely slow you down.
Yeah, and now she's not on any Valium, and she used to have seizures, but now, I mean, she hasn't had seizures in years, and her Keppra is doses half. So she's really reduced her medications, and that's also helped her improve her cognition. And as she gets better in those senses, she can do more and more on her own. And this year, which is her final year at UGA, is her first experience living independently in another dorm. That this has happened, actually, it was supposed to happen in August, but she fell and broke her jaw, so it didn't happen until January. But now she's basically living in the dorm, independently, and it's been great experience for her, and she's going to the dining hall and meeting people through that, and so she's getting, I think, a bit of the college experience. I just wish she was able to have more of it,
Yeah.
but she's finally getting what she wanted.
It seems like she's doing really
Thank
well.
you.
So, when you say live independently, are you living alone?
Yes.
That's fantastic. This podcast is presented by the Victory Advantage, which is a nonprofit. And our goal, ultimate goal, is to help people with disabilities live independently. So to see somebody that has gone from where you've been to where you are now, that is just miraculous.
Thank you.
And it just puts a big smile on my face just to hear your story. How long have you been walking?
I've been walking since I was an inpatient at the Shepherd Center.
They
Okay.
started her walking really early in her therapy, and it
Mm.
would take, at that time, the first time she walked, she had to have like harness support that strapped her to the
My dad
ceiling.
has photos and videos.
I have videos of everything.
Yeah, I've seen
Um,
those. I saw Madison in that. Yes,
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
So Karla was in this harness, and then they would have a big table walker kind of thing, and then there were four people helping her walk. That was the first time walking.
So there are people on my legs and on my arms, and they like would move the walker forward and then move my legs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they started her walking, and then she went to the treadmill, and she would have like four people with a treadmill, or three people with a treadmill too. I mean, it was a big thing. Now, now she's walking, with a walker, and she just needs one person behind her, to stop her from losing balance. And we walk at least a mile when we go out walking. We walk for a mile or so, and we have plans to go the Camino de Santiago in a year and a half or so and walk 10 miles a day, or close to that. So
Y'all don't set small goals.
No.
Oh, that is tremendous. And, each step, and, meaning that figurative and literally is such a huge milestone for you in that aspect, which is much smaller than what you've gone through. I can speak to that experience as being almost breathtaking, just to see that you've accomplished that and being able to dress yourself. I mean, when somebody has a disability, going from being very independent to being totally dependent is,
Devastating. It's devastating.
it is, and it makes you grieve. You want that old self, you want that independence back, and it's a tough place to be, but you've kept on going. You've kept on going. Okay, let's take a break and hear a message from our sponsor.
The Soaring Through Adversity podcast is presented by Victory in Time. Victory in Time's mission is to help executives, leaders, and business owners excel in their faith, lives, and work. Through speaking engagements, one-on-one mentoring, and our mastermind groups, known as Victory Circles, Victory in Time wants to help you become the best leader you can be. Find out more at victoryintime.com. Also, don't forget to pick up your copy of the Soaring Through Adversity book, Life Lessons to Lead Triumph and Rise Above. All net proceeds from sales of the Soaring Through Adversity book benefit Victory Advantage.
So, tell me about you had mentioned earlier that you have your good days and your bad days. Tell me about what a good day looks like.
A good day is a day where I need no help from my parents. Plus, me feeling confident in my ability to do the things that I'm doing. So, like transferring in and out of bed, standing while brushing my teeth, like brushing my hair and stuff.
The stuff that so many people take for granted.
Yeah, I mean, like, so my occupational therapist, probably last year, said or asked me to start standing in the bathroom while I'm doing all those things that I do seated. I started standing with my dad in the kitchen, holding on to like our big sink,
Yeah.
like brushing my teeth and stuff. And I got better at that, so he didn't have to help me or catch me as much. And then I moved to my bathroom and did it by myself. And then now I'm at my dorm doing it by myself. So I stand and get ready. Like although I have a bar in the bathroom that I use to pull up my pants and stuff.
When you said I have a bar, I was like, really?
Oh,
Not that kind of
I
bar.
have like
I was like, you go, girl.
um, but so I like stand and brush my teeth and stuff. And on the days that I have class, I sit back down in my wheelchair. I feed myself. I get myself breakfast, and then I transfer into my automatic chair, and then go to class.
How many classes do you take?
I only take one class because this is the only major required class I have left in order to graduate. I have one elective left, but I'm taking that in Spain.
You're impressive.
Thank you.
So, when you have a bad day, let's don't even ask what that looks like, but let's ask what your attitude's like when you have a bad day.
On a bad day, like when my body's not working with me, it just is awful, and it makes me feel like I can't do anything. The things I want to do for myself and the kind of life that I want for myself is unavailable to me, and that I won't reach it. Sometimes that is a very valid feeling, but when I get stuck in that feeling, that's when things get bad. And yeah, Dad, you want to comment?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, so there are sort of fluctuations every even within a day. Like she'll feel really shaky when she does certain things. She gets tired. And she feels like she can't stand up. She gets very frustrated and feeling like nothing will ever get better. And those are just sort of the general everyday things. But then she's had a couple of bigger setbacks, and I just wanted to mention those two. So when she talked about when she was standing up brushing her teeth, we were um my wife is Spanish, so we go to Spain, every now and then, and we were planning last year to go to Spain, or 2 years ago. I don't even remember the time. It's all a blur. She started standing in preparation for going to Spain, where she doesn't have as many like bars and stuff to help her stand. And so she'd have to walk up some stairs, so we were doing lots of exercise. And then it turned out that she basically got a hairline fracture or a stress fracture of the neck of her femur and needed to put screws to stabilize it. The doctor told us, like, this is the kind of fracture that he sees in young people that are like in boot camp training, or if they're do a lot of activity, and like in boot camp or something, then they have these fractures of the neck, and the treatment would be to stay off your legs for a month or two, which wasn't really an option for Karla. So they recommended putting the screws in. And then last year in 2024, we started doing these long walks outside, and
In order to increase my endurance.
Yeah.
right, in order to increase her endurance and every benefit that can happen. But then in July of last year,
The same day
suddenly,
that a cousin from Spain was arriving to Athens.
yeah, he had just arrived, and then she fell basically she fell on her face.
I belly flopped onto my chin.
She was walking outside, and because of her brain injury, she doesn't have the normal reflexes that you and I would have. And so she started leaning forward. I was with her, but I didn't catch her. She just went flat on her face. She did try and break herself, so that was a sign of some kind of reflex, but it was too late, and she hit her chin on the concrete, broke her jaw in two different places. She destroyed
I
several
have a scar
teeth.
right here.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and so had been planning to move into the dorm that August, but her jaw was wired shut, and we had to, like,
Wired shut.
yeah,
Girl.
yeah.
I lost a lot of weight.
She
Did
lost a lot
you?
of
Yeah.
weight. She couldn't eat. No, I mean, it was like, so she's had some big setbacks, right? Two kind of major events, like the screws in her hip and then the broken jaw. But she all during that whole time, she still powered through it, stayed with therapy, and worked. She has her goals of wanting to get out of the wheelchair permanently.
She
Um,
stayed with therapy even with her jaw wired shut.
Why
yeah.
would I not?
I love you. There you go. Because I've heard, you know, 1 day in bed or 2 days in bed, you lose 20% of your muscle mass, when you're just laying around doing nothing. And that's why they want you up. Like when you're at Shepherd Center, they want you up and they want you doing something all the time. And so, with my small deficits that I've got, it's the same thing. It's keep going and build that leg strength because I've understood from all of my physical therapies is, your balance comes from the strength in your legs in many cases, plus the other things you have going on. You're just tough.
Thank you.
I don't know about your jaw, but you're just tough.
Thank you so much.
Well, and she's starting now. I mean, we're doing more things. So she's doing hippotherapy. So she's going out horseback riding once a week. And that started last year. And she's also working out with a personal trainer
Well, and doing trapeze.
and doing trapeze. I forgot about that. Yeah, she's doing trapeze.
Is there anything you cannot do?
Nothing I won't try.
There you go. There you go. Tell me about your involvement in the UGA Food to Kids.
Oh, okay.
How's that been a part of your journey?
So my grandbig, Ella, she like okay, so for my story, we had to have like proof of volunteering every month.
Uh huh.
And so through my grandbig Ella, who volunteered at food bank every Wednesday through this thing called Food to Kids, I heard about Food to Kids, which is an organization, a UGA organization. It is very small, and they meet. I'm not sure if it's changed at all, but when I used to go, they had food baggings like on a weekly basis. I went every Wednesday. I really couldn't. I couldn't really participate in that much. I did my best to try, but
Yes.
mainly I was there for moral support.
Well, there you go. You're taking care of yourself and taking care of others too.
But then the year after that, my senior year, I believe. So I was in Food to Kids for like around 3 years. So the first year I was just at food baggings, and the second year, or in that spring, after the year had ended, I applied to be, I can't remember the exact name, like fundraising coordinator.
Hmm.
And I applied for that, and I got it. So then, the next year, I was emailing all kinds of businesses around Athens trying to get donations for a fundraising auction that I threw at the end of the year.
Do you want to work for the Victory Advantage?
I'm taking job offers, so yes, possibly.
That's great. That's great. Okay.
I'm graduating soon, so I'm not saying no. I would love
There
to.
you go. There you go. Scott, if you could give any advice to other parents going through something similar, what would it be?
Well, I think if you're going through something similar, and actually a friend of mine is going through something similar right now, I would say that talking to doctors is hard, especially when you're in this kind of situation, because you don't really it's hard to retain information. I lost 30 pounds in 3 weeks while she was in the ICU. I kind of wish I could do that today, but
Not for the same reason.
not for the same reason. No, but um but you're so stressed and you're not hungry, and you can't really take care of yourself. I know people say take care of yourself, but there's I think that advice is pretty useless because you're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Talking to doctors is really important, and the way Christina and I dealt with it was different. So I'm a scientist, so I know all the literature, but I don't know all the literature, but I know how to get to literature. But I didn't do any research into Karla's condition. Christina did do a lot of research, and the reason I didn't is because didn't Google anything, I didn't look up papers, and I didn't because I know that it's just impossible to really evaluate a scientific research paper when your daughter's in the ICU, or even when she was recovering in the Shepherd Center. There's just no way you could actually evaluate that critically and understand what they're saying. And then talking with doctors, I think it's important to listen to what they say, but also it's important to listen to what they're not saying. And I had an advantage in that because my father was a physician, and I would talk to him all the time. And it was very interesting because he would, I would tell him what doctors were telling me, and he was always very skeptical about what, if someone said something, very pessimistic, and I'd say, well, I wouldn't listen to that necessarily. That's not necessarily the right thing, right? So, and he had a really, even though he was 1,000 miles away, he had a really keen sense of the medical issues involved and how much uncertainty there was. And I think with the brain, there's a lot of uncertainty, and you just don't know how the brain is going to recover and respond to an insult like what Karla had or what other people have. You just don't know. And like I said, that when the neurologists were telling us Karla's prognosis was, could be this way, or it could be normal. And the trauma surgeons were saying, yeah, this is really bad. They were thinking Teresciavo, and she's never going to get any better. 3 days later, they looked at her and they said, wow, this is a miracle. They never would have envisioned that, right? So
Yeah.
so different doctors come at things with different perspectives, but I think it's really hard for a parent to sort of evaluate that information. And I think you need to listen to what they're not saying, right? So the neurologists weren't telling us that Karla was brain dead, right? So that was important. And
So be able to read between the lines, more or
you gotta
less.
you gotta sort of, yeah, read between the lines, and also remember that the whole point of the brain, right, the whole point, and this is me as a scientist talking now, the whole point of the brain is to interact with the environment and to learn from the environment, and to respond to the environment, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the brain. And so the brain will find a way to do something if you force it to, if it can. Right there, right, if you're missing a whole section of your brain that does something, then maybe there's no physical way that the brain can do that. But if, in most cases, or in many cases, I think the brain is going to try and figure out how to do something if you keep on telling it to do something.
My doctor talked to me about like rerouting.
Yeah, so that the axons are going to find new pathways, right? And this doesn't work for everything. Like, I have a niece I told you about who just had a stroke, and she's lost a lot of her vision, and that may not come back, right? But a lot of things, right, especially with Karla's movement disorders or things, or speech, those types of things will come back but you have to work on them. You have to force your brain to do things, and that is the hard thing. I mean, it's hard
It is
work
very
what Karla.
uncomfortable.
And yeah, you have to challenge. I mean, this is what Karla's physical therapist says all the time: motivation plus challenge, and that equals success, right? And so you have to be motivated, and Karla's very motivated, and then you have to be challenged. And if you're not challenged, then you're not gonna recover.
I've
Yeah.
been very fortunate with the therapist that I've had. I've been very, very fortunate.
the sort of recovery is from a brain injury like Karla's is kind of like the stock market. Not the stock market now, but generally the stock market, right? It goes up and goes down and goes up and goes down, and it's kind of like a shaky line,
Yes.
always going up, right? And so don't get so worried when it drops a little bit, because the next day it's going to rise a little bit, and that's kind of what I think recovery from Karla's recovery looks like. It
Yeah.
has there's big ups, there's big downs, there's small ups, there's small downs, but generally the trend is in the upward direction, and you just got to push through those down times.
My goal is by the end of this semester to be walking like within the dorm room but rolling to class.
Very
And
good.
and like no one said that that's not possible. So
Anything is possible. And that was my next question. What did you see your life like by the end of the year?
well, I'm hoping that I will be out of the dorm by at the end of May or early May.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hoping by that point I'll be able to walk around here without any assistance, and 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 feed myself and use the bathroom and stuff without anyone here, and just only use the wheelchair to and from class.
I got a question for you, Karla.
Mhm.
You did an interview, and the article was called This Message Can't Wait. Tell us what message can't wait.
Oh, um, to not text and drive. That is a message that only the people that want to hear it will actually listen. Which is sad, but like I've heard at least from my cousins that my story has helped them or helped their friends to not text and drive. So I'm hoping if other people hear this as well, that they also won't. But when I'm in the car with my dad and stuff, I do see people texting and driving, and it is very annoying. I can't yell at them to
Yeah.
get off their phone. And it's not my place to really. Yeah, just get off your phone when you're driving. That's a message I can't wait.
You know, what I've learned with myself, with Madison, speaking with you, and many others that I've interviewed and I've met, is the message I'm trying to get across is, at any moment, a person can become disabled.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people don't think about. I know when we're raising money or we're trying to get our message across, I've had people tell me, well, disability doesn't affect me. Well, it could. It could in an instant. It could with a diagnosis. It could with an accident like you had. Your grandchild could be born with an issue. It does affect everybody at some point, taking care of your parents. And nobody wants that to happen, but it's a reality. And people hearing your story, don't text, don't be on your phone. That is a
It's so
message.
dumb. It's just stupid. It's so stupid.
Well, I'm sorry you had to learn that lesson this way.
Me too.
Yes.
I think I already knew that when I was 17. So
Well, do you think, I don't know, this is a hard question, but this is a message that can't wait. And you're able to be here.
mhm.
You've learned to walk again. You're living by yourself. You're
I haven't
speaking.
learned to walk again totally yet. I'm still learning.
Oh,
Yeah.
hey,
Well, she says that because she needs me around her to feel
yes,
safe, but that doesn't mean she's not walking.
you're
So
walking. We're
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to go with that. You're walking. So you have a message to tell. And I think, you have a lot of purpose in life, but that's a very strong one because look how many lives you could save.
Thank you so much. Thank
Well,
you.
Karla and Scott, thank you both for sharing your incredible journey. Your story is a testament to strength, love, and resilience. Your openness is much appreciated, and spending this time with you has been such a blessing.
Thank you thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us on the Soaring Through Adversity podcast. If this conversation has touched you, please share this episode and help spread the awareness about the dangers of distracted driving and how, in the blink of an eye, a disability can affect anyone at any time. You can listen and subscribe on our YouTube channel, the Victory Advantage website, or wherever you get your podcast. New episodes are released on the first of each month. To learn more about our foundation, the Victory Advantage, please visit thevictoryadvantage.org. There you can find more information, donate, or apply for grants that support individuals with cognitive and physical disabilities. We serve the Union County, North Carolina area as well as the greater Piedmont area. We actually have grant funds available and are encouraging potential candidates to apply right from our website under the grant tab. Thank you for supporting our cause, and always remember, faith first, not last, will lead to victory in time. And until next time, keep soaring.